Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the zany side of Arnold Schoenberg. That composer was just a laugh riot. And if you didn't find Erwartung or Die glückliche Hand or Pierrot Lunaire, the absolute knee-slapping bucket of jollity that Schoenberg obviously intended that they be, there are three works you should consider. And I'm going to talk about all three, two of them in some detail. They are all based on music by other people. That's part of what makes them so zany. Two of them are concertos. His concerto for String Quartet and Orchestra, and his cello concerto. And the last is the famous arrangement of the Brahms Piano Quartet No. 1 in G minor. But I want to talk specifically about the two concertos because these are just nuts. I mean, the Brahms is nuts too, but these are even nuttier nuts because of what Schoenberg does to his source material. Now, the cello concerto was based on a 1746 keyboard concerto by Georg Matthias Monn, who lived from 1717 to 1750. He didn't make it long at all. Nobody knew this piece particularly well. But this is kind of like Schoenberg's Pulcinella. You know, he does sort of similar things to this that Stravinsky did to his sources, Gallo mostly, but everyone thought in the day that it was Pergolesi. What makes this so interesting is how unusually weird he gets this stuff to sound almost entirely by simply orchestration, by color, by texture. He follows the course of the work fairly clearly. Now, he wrote this concerto for Pablo Casals, who spent the better part of a year thinking of reasons to reject it for the very simple reason that the cello part is insanely, ridiculously difficult. That's why the piece hasn't been recorded many times. You may recall that Yo-Yo Ma did one with Seiji Ozawa. It was coupled like to Strauss's Don Quixote or something like that. But, you know, and there was one on Vergo. There are very, very few of them. And we're going to talk about the best shortly. But just to let you know what he does with the concerto for cembalo, this orchestration, this is the score here, is for, let's see, two flutes, both of which play piccolos, two oboes, two clarinets, two bassoons, two horns, two trumpets, trombone, timpani, glockenspiel, xylophone, general percussion, which turns out to be triangle, cymbals, bass drum, snare drum, tambourine, celesta, harp, solo cello, and strings. It's your typical Baroque arrangement, right? I mean, it's really, really wild. And for me, the most fun is the slow movement, which I'm going to play you a little bit of because it's an astonishing thing. He makes the thing sound kind of like a Mahlerian funeral march, the way he scores it. It's fascinating with the Colegno strings clicking along and whatnot. It's just delicious. Here, listen to this, and here you go. Schoenberg's cello concerto. Unbelievable. did you think of that? I mean, nuts, right? But that's nothing. If you think the Cello Concerto is crazy, wait till you hear his Concerto for String Quartet and Orchestra. Wait, I hear you say? You didn't know that Schoenberg wrote a Concerto for String Quartet and Orchestra? Or maybe you were afraid that Schoenberg wrote a Concerto for String Quartet and Orchestra. I was terrified when I first heard of that because I know it was violin concerto. I mean, I have a cat. I don't like to hear her tortured and dying, but I know Schoenberg's violin concerto. And here is the Concerto for String Quartet that it's based on, fortunately, Handel. It's based on Handel's Concerto Grosso Opus 6, number 7. Believe it or not. But boy, what he does to this Concerto Grosso. Now, if you know the Handel Concerti Grossi, Opus 6, number 7 has 5 movements. The Schoenberg Concerto only has 4. He sort of conflates the first 2 and then works with the rest of them. And the last movement is a very famous tune. It's a hornpipe. And I'm going to let you hear the 2 of them sort of next to each other because it's wonderful. Here's Handel's original. Okay, and now here is Schoenberg Concerto for String Quartet and Orchestra, the same movement in his version. Sounds a little different, didn't it? Well, let's look at the orchestration of this one. It's equally wacky. You get piccolo, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets, trombone. You'll notice it's the same orchestration as the Monn arrangement. Timpani, piano, well, that's new, harp, xylophone, glockenspiel, triangle, snare drum, bass drum, cymbals, tambourine, string quartet, and strings. Whoa! Now, isn't that something? Here's the thing. Formerly, these pieces were not easy to find on disc. They really weren't, especially not easy to find well performed. But happily, as part of his Schoenberg edition, Robert Kraft with the London Symphony or the Philharmonia Orchestra made wonderful, wonderful recordings on Naxos, which is why I get to play you examples of them, which is phenomenally wonderful, absolutely wonderful that these exist. In the cello concerto, the cello soloist is Fred Sherry, and he is a marvelous, marvelous cellist. And in the string quartet concerto, you've got the 20th Century Classics Ensemble with Robert Kraft and the Fred Sherry String Quartet. I mean, I assume that Fred Sherry is leading the Fred Sherry String Quartet, which is quite the polished group, because these pieces are, I mean, it's Schoenberg. He makes the music somehow sound as thorny and difficult as it possibly can while still being tonal. And it is wonderful, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, it's just great. And I really, it's a pity that these pieces aren't played more frequently. It really is, because they add so much, a whole nother dimension to Schoenberg's character. I mean, he took these works very, very seriously. I mean, they are unique works of Schoenberg. He was proud of them, and he was equally proud of the Brahms Piano Quartet in G minor arrangement, which I'm going to close with. I'm not going to talk about that one extensively because that's going to be the subject of another talk, and I'll be able to do comparisons with that and the Brahms. It'll be a lot of fun all by itself. But the best recording of it is Robert Kraft's, his first one, the one that's on Sony. Legendary performances or great performances. I don't know, there's some series. He did it with the Chicago Symphony. It's a knockout. But he also did it extremely well. Right here. Is it on this one? Yes. On this disc, right there. That disc. Yeah, there. Get my fingers out of the way. Oh, there it is. It's a very, very good performance as well. He knew the piece like nobody else. And it's a wonderful way to give you a little bang to say goodbye. So here, listen to this. Now, I mean, did you ever really think in your life that you'd hear three major works by Schoenberg, and they, like I said, they are by Schoenberg, and they're wonderful, and he thought they were wonderful, and we should simply keep on listening, folks. Thank you for your time and attention. Get these recordings. Have some fun with Schoenberg. It's possible. Yes, indeed, it is. Take care.